the British public have been awake, not just on the mining industry, but to the whole rotten philosophy of the 1980s, that it's all about cash, and you bring in a chartered accountant and he'll tell you what to do. It isn't about that. It's about whether our society puts people in a place of dignity and serves them, or whether you just hand over your money to gamblers who don't create any wealth at all.
No!
Despite the fact we've been told we're an entrepreneurial society, this is a country today that has an utter contempt for skill. You talk to people who dig coal, run trade, doctors, nurses, dentists, tool makers. Nobody in Britain is interested in them. The whole of this so-called entrepreneurial society has focused on the city news we get in every bulletin, telling us what's happened to the pound sterling to 3 points of decimals against a basket of European currency. Skill is what built this country's strength, and it is treated with contempt. I must confess, the auctioning off of public assets, particularly the latest disgusting Frankenstein advertisements, which told me more about the mentality of the minister who devised the scheme than it did about the sale itself. These are assets built up by the labour of those who work in electricity, and by the taxpayer who put the equipment in, now to be auctioned off at half their price to make a profit for a tax cut for the rich before the next election comes. If these were local councillors, they would be before the courts for willful misconduct. And because they are ministers, and then some of them later go on the boards of the companies they privatise, they are treated as businessmen who know better how to handle it as members of the board of directors than allegedly they did as ministers responsible.
No!
Margaret Thatcher. Were it not for her, I probably wouldn't be a socialist.
No!
Local government has been crippled. Across the river is the London County Council County Hall, the set seat of government of the greatest city in the world, empty, to be sold, because the government wanted to cripple local government. And so indeed they have. The poll tax, centralisation of the business rate, the punishment of the Liverpool and Lambeth councillors was to take all power from local government and put it in the hands of a government that claimed it didn't believe in the role of the state.
No!
The undermining of the trade unions with less rights in Britain than they have in Eastern Europe. The tax cuts for the rich and benefit cuts for the poor, the censorship of the media, the abuse by the security services, the restriction of civil liberties. And when we look back on the 1980s, we will see many victims of market forces. I do not share the general view that market forces are the basis of political liberty. Every time I see a person in a cardboard box in London, I say that person is a victim of market forces. Every time I see a pensioner who can't manage, a victim of market forces. The sick who are waiting for medical treatment that they could accelerate by private insurance, they are the victims of market forces.
No!
What the Right Honourable Lady ought to do is to take proper note, both of the warnings from her Admiral and of the invitations from the Secretary-General of the United Nations and from the opinion of growing numbers, I believe, throughout the country. The paramount interest of our country and most other countries throughout the world is that we should have a peaceful settlement of this dispute. I say we have to try again to secure that peaceful settlement.
No!
Truth still has a value in the politics of our society when all the lies and half-truths and half-promises about independent reviews are dismissed. The President of the Board of Trade said he agonized over the decision. He's not the one who's going to suffer the agony if any pits are closed. If he'd agonized, why didn't he have the review while he was agonizing? So people could have put alternative views in when he was discussing it. Why not spend months? I've got a letter here from Cecil Parkinson's office telling someone who wrote from Derbyshire the privatisation of electricity will have no effect whatever on coal closures. Ministers have lied and lied and lied about the mining industry, and that is why people are so incensed. And don't tell us it's market forces. If market forces applied to the farming industry, half the farms in Britain would have closed years ago, because you can get cheaper food from New Zealand and Australia, and the Tory party depends on the farmers. So they support, and I'm in favour. I'm not in favour of applying market forces to farm. You don't close a farm 1 year and open it the next. But the miners haven't had set-aside grants where they're given money not to produce coal, and that is the reality of this debate.
No.
Her whole philosophy was that you measure the price of everything and the value of nothing, and we have to replace that.
No.
You know, my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation fought very hard for a welfare state in my country in which the rights of the individual were underpinned by the collective provision of free healthcare, free education, decent affordable housing, proper pensions. And that was, you know, that's what we refer to in my country as the post-war consensus. Parties came and went, Labour, Conservative, Liberal, nobody ever changed that until Margaret Thatcher came along. And she decided that it would be better to have to pay less taxes. So she began to take apart the welfare state and that provision, and the government owned the coal mines. And although there was plenty of coal under our country, she began to close them down. So they went on strike, and really the strike became a defence of that welfare state, of those ideals of collective responsibility, collective provision.
No.
I had one experience the other day which confirmed me in my view that she hasn't really changed the thinking or culture of the British people. I don't know how many people travel as I do on trains, but I go regularly on the trains and I see all the little businessmen with their calculators working out their cash flow, frowning people, looking and glaring at each other. Thatcherite train, the train of a competitive society. Coming back from Chesterfield the other day, the train broke down. And on the it wholly changed. Somebody came in and said, I have a cup of tea from my thermos. And then people looked after each other's children. And a young couple talked to me, and I said, after about half an hour, how long have you been married? Oh, we met on the train, they said. And a woman said, will you get off at Derby and bring my son in Swansea, because he'd be worried. By the time we got to London, we were a socialist train. Because you can't change human nature.
No.
What has been totally lacking from the party opposite has been any awareness of the sense of public outrage that people could be treated as the president of the Board of Trade treated them when he announced the closure of 21 pits. Individual members may have taken a different view. It was callous, it was brutal, it came from a party that prides itself on a citizen's charter and a classless society, and that is why hundreds of thousands of people are marching in London today. And this little seminar on gas prices doesn't get near what this whole argument is all about. And everybody knows on our side of the house that this is a sustained attack upon the mining industry because the previous Prime Minister regarded the NUM as the enemy within. That's what it's about. Of course, that's what it was about. The term the enemy within was covered for that reason. And it gives me huge pleasure that the Tory party threw out Thatcher.
No. No. No.